Thank you for joining us on Impolite Company, where we'll be talking about religion, politics, and their intersections. Today, I'm here with Dan Shibu, and we're going to discuss the Cyropedia by Xenophon, and as well as uh, Machiavelli's The Prince. Did I pronounce your last name right?
It's Shibu, but
Shibu.
it's fine. Yeah, it's okay.
Excuse me. Yeah.
No
And I'm, of course, Cameron Jones, your host, and we're on video today. Hopefully, that'll be continuing. So, Dan, why are we talking about this topic of Cyropedia and The Prince?
I saw it in a podcast, and I was so fascinated by, when the podcaster mentioned it, I was like, he's right. Why don't we talk about virtue-based politics instead of the cynical form of politics that we're always introduced to in the form of Machiavelli and his Prince? Because right now, when we look at the political climate, you see this influencing how politicians behave and how people interact with politics. There's always this realistic undertone, like this focus on realism in politics, and not as much on virtue-based ethics and virtue as it affects politics. And I think this is a conversation that needs to be had. Why don't we focus more on virtue when it comes to politics?
You're right. He did. He did. I watched that podcast with you as well. So he did say specifically, "Hey, we have this idea of people in power as Machiavellian. Do we have to?" And he was trying to. He specifically says, and this is true, that historically the Cyropedia was used from then on to instruct young princes and young rulers how to be a ruler, a political person. They're both of these are sort of a manual on that. So the Cyropedia was an original, and then there was a change socially towards using the Prince whenever it came out. It was like, oh, this is the new hot material. The Cyropedia is no longer relevant. We're going to look at this. Why did that change occur? We may not be able to figure it out, but we can take a look. First of all, we'll say that when you described Cyropedia, you said it was virtue ethics, right?
Yeah, I think it's more virtue-based leadership, and it cares more about the character and the virtue of the leader than Machiavelli's emphasis on and his rule-based guideline on telling a prince or a ruler of a city-state in Italy, I assume it was made for, telling them, oh, don't worry too much about virtue. Focus more on, the realities, the political and social realities that you're dealing with, and try to control everything and be realistic about the way you deal with people and with politics. And I appreciate there's some value to what he's saying, right? Like we have to not be in La La Land when it comes to politics and political realities. We have to
When you mean Machiavelli?
Machiavelli,
Yeah.
of course, yeah. You have to kind of be realistic about what you're dealing with. But I think that the overemphasis and the singular focus we have on the Prince, and not as much on other views of how to approach politics, especially the virtue-based view, virtue ethics-based view, or like the virtuous leader, as characterized by Cyrus in Xenophon's Cyropedia, is lacking, is sorely lacking, and I think we need to return to that because right now everyone seems to be following the Prince's guidelines and not as much the Cyropedia's guidelines.
So we agree that both of these are basically a constitutional information saying here's how to do. Here's how to rule. They're both saying here's how to gain and hold on to power, and they're both for rulers, right? That's the basic similarity of the two.
Yeah, it is definitely focused on gaining power. Although I do think that Cyrus's, the
Xenophon
Cyropedia, yeah, the Cyropedia is more focused on how you can be someone that people look up to and do what's necessary and right. Like it does value power and it does understand that it's important, but that's the beauty of it, that it doesn't singularly focus on how to gain power and hold on to it. It also focuses on what impact and what good you can do because of it. Because, like, if you look, like, in the later chapters of Cyropedia, it's all about how Cyrus resists invasions and unifies Greater Persia, and, like, does all the military actions he needs to with his leadership, with his charismatic and virtuous leadership. He's actually, like, convincing people to turn sides and come to his side, and that's not because he's a great political mastermind per se, but because he's virtuous. People are drawn to his character and his leadership.
When you're talking about Cyrus, it sounds like you have and I think that we know that it's a myth. It's highly mythicized.
Yeah.
So of course it has a lot of ideals in it, which is why you're speaking with such honor for, like, this heroic figure. It's like, he's a good guy. He did good things. He brought peace to these people, and that is how the Cyropedia reads. But if you're a little bit skeptical, critical even, you can see that Cyrus believes that he is bringing peace. He believes that what he does to his subjects is for their own good. And that's why it's honorable. That's the idea of the virtue behind what he's doing. As opposed to Machiavelli, whenever he tells you how to be a prince, he's saying, trust me, you're going to do what's best for your own good. He's basically saying that they don't know what's best for their own good anyway, and it doesn't matter if this is for their own good. So Cyrus says they don't know what's best for their own good. We have to kind of reprogram them to make them aware. Like, he basically believes that men are not, we're above animals, is what he says at the beginning of Cyropedia.
Yes.
And he says that we hate people who think they're above us. We do not like being ruled by other men. That's, like, the worst thing that men can do.
Yeah, at the very beginning.
But then he basically says that, but Cyrus was able to show us how to be ruled.
Yes, exactly.
We are made to be rulers or ruled. And since we can't all be rulers, we have to figure out how to be ruled. And that's what he does, is he subordinates people and reprograms them to the point where they say, I thought I was humble before, but now I realize that you're the real ruler, and all of my welfare is based on what you think of me.
Right. Yeah. And this also has a bit to do with it might be slightly off topic, but I don't think too much, Aristotle's ideas of governments and the common principle of the different types of governments, whether it's monarchy, aristocracy, or polity, is that all of them are about the common interest. And that's how I think Xenophon was trying to portray that Cyrus really got people over to his side. He convinced them that his interest aligned with theirs. And it became a common interest, and he managed to subordinate them as a result.
So Cyrus believes that they have a common interest. That's the difference between the Machiavellian prince and Cyrus.
Yeah.
Cyrus believes that his interest, that he knows better for the person. Machiavelli says, look, they're a fool anyway, so they might as well be your fool.
See, in The Prince, Machiavelli is saying, just worry about your self-interest. Obviously, he acknowledges that people are going to have expectations of you as a ruler, but he really cares more about the self-interest of the ruler and not as much about making political impacts and changing the lives of the citizenry or the nation or the land or anything for that capacity for the greater good per se.
This is probably where we're going to start to differ more. I believe that both books tell the subject basically how to do the same things. It basically says the same things. Now it sounds to me like you're saying that that Cyropedia is interested in the common good, and that perhaps Machiavelli's Prince is not interested in the common good, but in the singular good. And that's not how I read it at all. In fact, when Machiavelli explains how the Prince, he says, is it better to be compassionate or to be stingy, he says. And he says, now it may seem that to be compassionate is good, but the thing is, a compassionate prince is either genuinely compassionate, in which case he's likely not to be recognized for his compassion, or he's seen as faking his compassion to be liked, in which case he's likely to be hated.
Or he could be faking it to make it and
Right.
practicing compassion as a way to eventually, in his inner nature, also be compassionate. But regardless, I get the point you're trying to make. But I do think that, like whether, can you tell me more about, but how does that relate to the fact that he thinks you should still care about common good?
So it says, should you be stingy or should you be compassionate? That was a bit about the optics. And the second part, what you're asking about, is how does this relate to the common good? Well, if I'm compassionate and I give my money to the person who is compassionate or desires to be seen as compassionate, ends up being lavish. This is what the prince basically says. And so in lavishness, he's actually taxing more, requiring more, and then he's going to run out. So it's basically bad policy to be lavish and compassionate in that way. In fact, it's compassionate to be miserly with your money, because it may be throughout the years that individuals would say, oh, he's a miser, he's so stingy with his money. But after 50 years of reign, the people will say he was a compassionate king because he didn't tax us.
Yeah, sure. I think there's some value in that, but I think and I'll go back to the point you made earlier. I think Machiavelli's The Prince is more about how to gain power and maintain it, and Xenophon's Cyropedia is more about how to gain power and then use it to better people's lives as a whole, with the greater impact.
Right. So the thing is that you think that the prince is not trying to do it for that. And I'm saying what I just explained about the reading, saying that it actually is telling you to be more compassionate. It is saying that by being stingy, you'd be compassionate. So I'm just saying that Machiavelli's idea is that you should do this because it's for the better good.
Yeah.
So what you do for your political gain isn't just self-justifying, even if that's how it looks to the fools. You're actually better. Basically, both of these writers believe that there are lesser and greater men. And if you're going to be a greater man, you have to treat the lesser men like lessers. Now, Machiavelli says they're fools. So you're just going to have to you have to use them as fools in order to do good. And Cyrus says they just need to accept that they're subordinates.
Yeah. But key difference though is that, yes, they just have to accept their subordinates. But just like how if we might form teams today, you say, okay, I really like this guy as a leader because he's the most competent, he's the most charismatic, he brings us together. That's the kind of view I feel like I read from Cyropedia. Like, he's not saying, similar to Prince, that, oh, they're just idiots, I'm going to ignore them entirely. Mm-hmm. No, he's saying, I'm going to convince them of my way of doing things, and I'm going to show them the value of it, and they're going to be so convinced they're going to join my side and work under me to achieve this common goal that we're going to share. Mm-hmm. So I think that, going back to your example, right, for a second, about compassion, we can see this in the modern day, and I'm going to agree with Machiavelli a little here. Like, you'll see government overspending a lot. You'll see a lot of government overspending, and some might argue, let's use Kansas City right now as an example. Kansas City gives free bus rides for everyone who wants to use a bus system. And the argument might be that kind of overspending taxes people a lot.
That type of compassion.
Yeah, that kind of compassion of giving everyone.
Not compassionate.
Yeah, so that might put the budget in deficit. You might argue that. But think about how many lives that impacted. Like, so many people cannot afford. I know for sure. Like, I couldn't use my car for a while, and there's no way I would have been able to make it to school and back without that bus. And like, if we consider in purely economical terms, sure, like, that might not be a wise economical move to make. But in terms of the impact on people's lives that you're having, it was amazing that I can actually not worry too much about transportation and focus on being able to come to school and back without, like, being concerned about, like, I'm going to have to quit school because I'm never going to be able to make it there and back on time.
And you're just proving that there is a common good. Like, there's a material thing that we could talk about called common good that exists. And both of them seem to believe that exists, that there is such a thing as that. The only thing that I think that Cyropedia gets wrong is that, and I don't think that I don't think that his intention is to tell you, hey, Cyrus did it right. I think that his intention is to say, look at how this utopia works. Is it really utopia? Because he leaves enough, he honors Cyrus, but he also leaves situations where it's like, is it really true? Cyrus supposedly knows what's best for them, but does he really support their common good, or is it just common good as it seems to be that in Cyropedia, the common good is only what defined by your relationship to Cyrus. Yes. So the better your relationship with Cyrus, the better you will be treated. He says that it's really the difference between Machiavelli and Cyrus is that Cyrus, it's purely a meritocracy.
And this is the key problem, if you might say, with both of these texts, and which is a good thing to compare them because they have common grounds in this sense. Both are focused on monarchical political systems. So whether it's the Prince or Cyrus, they're both monarchs. Mm-hmm. So you are talking about a specific type of system where self-interest of the monarch is tied to the interest of the state. Mm-hmm. Because he is the owner of the state, right? It is in his best interest to do as much for the state as possible because it serves his own interest that mm-hmm. the state does well because he owns the state. So obviously we understand there are more types of governments than this, and it might be hard in modern terms to apply a form of political ethics or political philosophy that was created for more for monarchs or even dictators and apply it to political leaders today who are more, working in terms of democratic republics. So the question then I would pose again against Machiavelli's Prince is why are we even considering this text that's applied to princes and not to democratic leaders?
Well, I would say that power is power and a ruler is a ruler. And so there's a lot more that can be brought over despite the fact that instead of it being a despotism, it's a democracy. We still have highly powerful individuals who, if they're good, then what they're doing is rewarding the people who are good. You know what I mean? And if we don't think that what they're doing is good, then what they're doing is tyrant. So kind of what Cyropedia does is says, I'm not a tyrant because look, it was for their own good that I conquered them. And so one of the things that Cyrus does is he says, don't think for a minute, he's talking to his soldiers, that you've done anything wrong by taking and enslaving. When you conquer, those are your rights. And then whenever you have those rights, it's actually compassion to allow them to have anything. So whenever you allow them to keep their wives or their property, they will see you as compassionate. And this is only true if you believe that you by right own them after you've conquered them. You know what I mean?
And this is the value of analyzing political texts like this that had such impact on leaders because
it sure did.
Regardless of which one is better or which one is worse, I think it's also nice to just look at them and say, what did they think? And how different are their views compared to now? Because you saying that really points out that they had a completely different view of slavery than we do now. And the idea that you need a sort of paternalistic leadership where someone needs to guide you the right way. And we might see that today as very patronizing, and we definitely do not like political leaders telling us how we should live our lives, how we should do things.
Which is what Xenophon says in the first sentence, right? We just discussed that the first thing he says is that men don't like to be told what to do.
They definitely don't like. I think, as much as people might not like Hobbes, there's some truth to what he says where it's we definitely tend
in a
towards
state of war.
We definitely tend towards anarchy there. We don't like to be ruled over. But the problem with that is that causes lack of coordination, lack of organization, and and all the problems that arise from this, such as, like, we're kind of left to our own devices then, and we might not have built like these beautiful, like, magnificent civilizations that we see around us, and all their remnants, like, all the wonders of the world, the pyramids, and so on and so forth. But returning to the point, like yes, I'm sure you can go out and live in the wild in a hut and live a great life, but we are coming together to build something bigger than us, and that's, I think, what I got from the Cyropedia, where it's like we could all live on our own if we wanted, but when we come together for a greater cause, for something bigger than any of us even together could be, that is a worthy achievement for people to strive towards.
So Cyropedia, since it's more of a fictionalized and his storytelling
Yeah.
than but although it certainly has elements of here's the rules, here's how to play the game. Um, Machiavelli's is more legitimately saying, hey, this is a manual because we're in a time where this manual is needed. I don't know what Xenophon's full intentions were. I think that he was more philosophically minded. In theory and utopia building and looking to see if it's possible. I think that he's working with thought progress, like a thought experiment. But I think that Machiavelli was very, in because we're 200 years away from Machiavelli, or 300 years as opposed to 2,000 years from Xenophon. We can assume a little bit better because he tells us what he's trying to do. He's doing the same thing that Hobbes is doing, which is saying, I don't like this. You just said a moment ago, we could live separately. He's saying, I don't like this, us living separately. He agrees with you in that we could have a better thing altogether if we would build towards it together. And in order for that to happen, there's going to be a little bit of some stratification. There's going to be a ruler. And the only difference is that...
And we could absolutely challenge that. Like, that's the beauty of democratic republics and the rise of it, especially in 1776 when the Constitution of the United States was ratified. It was like a challenge, a big, like, transcendence from the former way of doing things, which is you need stratification, you need organization, you need rulers and monarchs and leader-based polities. But that may not necessarily be the case, and that's why we're looking at these texts, because we're saying, well, maybe we could have a government where people work together and have as much freedom as possible while still achieving the great goals of civilization.
Mm-hmm. And so Machiavelli's saying, in order to maintain that, we're going to have to use some what is now considered Machiavellian tactics, but what in Cyropedia is considered doing harm. You have to be an enemy to your enemies, is what Cyropedia says. And so both of them are saying basically you should lie and trick and spy and do harm. It's necessary in order to be a good ruler.
And maybe
we agree,
yes, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
And maybe what we need is, as I'm thinking about this, as you told me, maybe we need a political text for the modern era, because, these are, like
I'm
you
sure
said,
there are some.
2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, but we need something influential, something that resonates with people, and something that actually works. Like, people, I'm like, yes, I've seen it a lot. Like, there's the Dictator's Handbook, but that's really to identify the gameplay, the play style of dictators, not really virtuous leadership. We need something that really, like, is both focused on actual, like, virtuous leaders, like a guidance for them, like, just like we're talking about in philosophy of law, the anxious judge, and Montesquieu, I believe, is giving them guidelines to how not to be anxious. We need maybe something of that sort for anxious leaders. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you make the right decisions? What do you do? Like, especially if you're focused on wanting to do right, wanting to do good for everyone as much as possible, how do you make the right decisions and not be confused or uncertain? And I think for the common man, we might encounter problems, so many problems in a single day, that we might not know how to deal with. I know, like, there are many situations where I might be completely indecisive. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to deal with something, and I might freeze. And
someone else might be able to do it better for you.
Yeah. But like that, I mean, that's where leadership also comes in. But that leader needs guidance as to like if even an ordinary person struggles, a person that might deal with it better, decision making, leading people, guiding people, also being given the tools that he needs to be able to do it better and to learn how to do it better is something that has always been valued, right? Like, even if you study ancient philosophy, even the Egyptians had their own political text and guideline for that one of the viziers gave to his son, which we both studied in ancient philosophy.
I haven't taken ancient philosophy yet.
Oh,
but
I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm
But
taking my philosophy backwards.
Dr. Guanelli, she, the first text she gives us, and unfortunately I forgot the name. Maybe you can look this up. It's an Egyptian philosophy text that a vizier gives his child or maybe grandchild, and it's like, this is the morals you should follow. This is the guidelines you should follow. But why does he tell him that? Because he's going to be the next leader. So he needs to be as good and as great as possible so that he can be a good leader. So even in that sense, it is a kind of political guidebook.
Yeah.
So I think that is, although maybe I distracted a little. I think
No.
Political guidebooks and handbooks are definitely something we need to also update every
what you said
few
was all
millennia.
good stuff, and helped me respark a thought that I was having a few weeks ago. Is this sure relates, especially if we look at it in a positive light, to religious texts that are telling how to be a good person is also the same thing as telling you how to be a good king or a good leader, right? The Old Testament is full of things that were basically how to be ruler. It's Abraham's ruling, it's Solomon ruling, and you want to be like these ideal characters, David's ruling even, and these ideal characters. And in the Ramayana, he's the perfect king. That's some of the story is at least about the fact that this is what it takes to sacrifice for your state is actually to be the greatest person to the point that you would give up what a person wouldn't give up.
They have a term for that. They call him Maryada Purusha, which means like Maryada means like the right way of doing things, the mannerly man, or like the righteous man. And the idea is that you look at his life and you learn how to be a good man from it. So, or a good person in general. This applies to anyone who wants to learn from his example. So he's a role model. So yes, as we can see in every culture and every place, there's this kind of character guideline, ethical guideline, and as it relates, political guideline that people want to really look at.
In the majority of these texts, I would assume, I'm not going to say that we have an exact sample file that we're talking about.
Shoot it at
but
me.
there's in the majority of these texts, I think that the person who is the sample person is deified. Cyrus is deified, at least by his enemies.
For the Persians and the homeland,
See, it does. Xenophon doesn't say. I think he actually does say that Cyrus was a god among men.
Great people and great men are great people in general are always deified because, like I said earlier,
But Machiavelli's not saying you have to be God to be a good leader.
That is interesting, and I think that appeals to people too. Let's be honest.
He's saying, look, that's the whole point of Machiavelli, saying the reality of what I'm telling you right now isn't about how things should be, it's about how things are. The difference with that between that and Cyropedia is saying this is how things should be and are. Machiavelli is saying to utopian, let's do good in a world that exists. That's what he's saying. And I don't think that Cyropedia doesn't have good merits. There's good merits in it. And I'll talk about some of the strengths in it in a minute. I will.
I'm going to be a bit of a deontologist and say...
You always are!
With Machiavelli, I'm going to say, if your means aren't good, if the rules you follow to get to a certain end is not good, how can you be sure that the end is good? And we can look at the fruits of Machiavellian ethics, right? And you might consider this unfair, but let's look at how it's influenced political leaders even to this day. We still have so many flaws in political leadership, and a lot of that I think comes from Machiavellian ethics, in my opinion. It's because the way that it teaches people to do things in politics is something that leads to bad fruits, bad consequences, and
So yeah, That's a good question. We can look at and see the data of what happened when people started reading The Prince, but we don't know.
It's still something to
the nations
consider.
that were under Cyrus, did they fare better? Not once they were under him. We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
So
That's
we
good.
can start making assumptions about France and Italy and stuff.
Good point.
After The Prince, but we don't really know, and that's why I was saying that it sounds, when I read Xenophon, it sounds to me like he was basically saying, like, you decide whether it's, because there's certain situations where he subordinates someone and they're clearly unhappy, even though they are subordinate. They're not happy to be subordinate, which is kind of what Cyropedia says is what you should be trying to do. There are situations where it just doesn't happen, and instead,
yeah, I mean, you're never going to get. There are situations where you'll need to subordinate someone, but
and Cyrus or the book assumes that will actually end up being for the greater good.
Not everyone is going to be happy with leadership, but sometimes you're going to have to make do and be like, listen, you might not like me, but we want to achieve a goal, and if you need to achieve it,
Cyrus has the mentality of, I'm not the leader you wanted, I'm the leader you needed.
Yes, definitely. I agree with you there. And if it wasn't Cyrus, there would definitely be political leaders all the time.
And now, basically Cyrus is saying that you're only ignorant if you don't realize that what I'm doing is for your own common good. But in The Prince, it really says they're going to be ignorant anyway, and they may not personally find that it is for their good, but what you are doing is for the good, because he's specifically saying our country is under attack by too many denominations of little groups of princes. We need one who's going to unify, like Cyrus did, and bring peace by war.
Exactly. How can you say you're striving for the common good if you don't try to unify all these peoples and groups of peoples and tribes into one common polity?
So Machiavelli famously says that the best Machiavellian was Cesare Borgia, famous Italian madman who would cut people up and show the whole world how bad he was. And in this famous story, he sent a mercenary to go and control this city. And then once that city was under control, he had the mercenary chopped up into pieces. And that was that compassion, or was that mercilessness? And Machiavelli says it was merciless, because by doing that, he quelled this rebellion and made them, and still he made them at peace by making them submit, and yet he kept them from hating him by making it seem as though
was killed,
as if the enemy was killed, so that they were justified. And then also other people said, "Oh, look at how terrible the violence was over there," and he put a stop to that. You know what I mean?
And that's why I disagree with Machiavelli.
And you said that if your means don't work, then they couldn't work. But
yeah,
in the concept there, Cesare Borgia did a service to that city by keeping it from being in a constant state of war, as Holmes would say.
And he gave them a villain to kind of crucify or kill, in this case, shred to pieces.
Yeah, and so the means justifies the end.
Yes, and I really
justifies the means.
Yes.
Other way around.
You're funny. I really think I just don't like that view, and that's why I just.
But it's
I'm not going to say
view, isn't it?
So that's why I'm saying, listen, you can say it. I'm not saying throw away Machiavelli completely. I'm saying, why is he the only focus? We should bring these other guys back, and we should also we should study The Dictator's Handbook, which is another book. We should study Xenophon, Cyropedia. We should study all of them. We should just say, let's look at only Machiavelli and see only this viewpoint of doing things. Let's at least give people an option, just like Xenophon gives people the option to consider whether Cyrus the Great is right in all his doings. Let's give people the option to look at all these different political texts and actually consider, maybe I want to mix and match. Maybe I want to take good things out of each of them. So the overemphasized trendiness or the focus of only one way of doing things is, I think, one of the problems, because we're not really looking into into really studying all the different ways, but we're just looking at one way of doing things.
Speaking of trends, I have seen, at least through the YouTube professors that I was perusing the past couple of weeks, there is an agreement in the community that there is a renewed interest in Xenophon and in the Cyropedia.
Yes.
And I don't think that, and I think that's why we're talking about it today, is because we've seen that big players are bringing it up. And this is where I would like to pivot to a question that I did not write down. And I think I had thought of it before, but I'm glad that I remembered it now. Who benefits from following one book over the other? Who benefits from telling themselves, they take us... I'm going to answer my own question, and you can take over from here. Whenever I look at the politics and I say, they're using us, they're taking us like fools, I benefit, since I see things that way, I benefit from looking at the Prince and saying, that is how they're operating. And if I am a ruler and I want to feel good about myself, then I would look at Cyropedia and say, see, I am a good person.
I just want to say, sorry, hold on. A couple minutes ago, we lost video.
That's fine.
And I just wanted to explain it's because we were using a battery-powered camera, and it's just going to be black on the screen. So
Emily, thank you so much for hanging out with us on audio or visual. And
yeah.
Maybe one day you'll see us in the flesh. So
right. I'll go back to not talking.
No problem. Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, I mean, my question is like, why would someone just subscribe to one over the other?
See, but that's my point. I'm saying that you don't have to. Your job is to be as educated in politics as possible, so you don't have to buy into one way of view and decide for yourself, like, what is actually working. If you just study one text, like you just said, then you look at a political situation, you'll have confirmation bias. You'll think, oh, look, this matches with what I read.
Well, I'm not saying that you only study one. I'm saying that you buy into one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Let's assume that you've read both very well, and you've been open-minded about everything, but you take a subscription. Somebody takes a stance eventually, you know.
See, the more sources you read on a topic, this applies to everything, but also in this specific case, the more political theories you read, the less likely you are going to be buying into one thing. Instead, you're going to be your consciousness on the topic is going to be so expanded. You're going to be like, well, I don't think.
Very optimistic.
I don't think. I think that. Well, okay, let's just say...
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, let's just say, like, the more education you have, education is not bad in this case. I think the more politically educated people are, they're going to see, okay, I'm not just a tool to be thrown around. I can actually discern for myself what is going on and what's actually happening, what's the political situation, what is actually driving these people that are making these decisions, what are their motivations, and intentions alone are not enough, right? Like, are they doing the right things to get to that goal? And, what was your question was, why would...
Well, I just think that what you're saying is true, is that the more conscious we are of things, the more consciously we can make decisions and have a more worldly view. But the question is really, I mean, what's stopping me from, at the end of the day, choosing one or the other because of my personal biases? And I don't think that we can ever get rid of our personal biases. I assume that's why we are able to even make decisions at the end of the day, because there's so much information. You're going to have to pick something that's relevant to you.
Yeah, so I think I answered that then, and you might not like my answer.
Right. No, I think that you're fair.
But yeah, the more educated you are, the more viewpoints you get, the more theories you learn on this topic, the more you stop buying into one in particular, and you start to realize maybe there are some good points in all of them.
I want to believe that, Dan. I really do. I really do. But you and I agree. We discussed this about past month, that some of the most educated people, the ones who know all of the philosophies, still subscribe to one of them.
Yes. I'm not going to deny that isn't the case. Like, there will always be people who...
I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying you can't do anything about it. Exactly.
Yeah. I actually do want to consider why might it be a bad thing? Maybe that one philosophy...
Maybe it's not a bad thing. Yeah.
Maybe that one political philosophy is the right way of looking at things. Or maybe in this context, that political philosophy does work. Maybe even because a lot of these political leaders, for example, were raised on Machiavelli. So if you look at it, the Machiavellian viewpoint, you're going to get a lot of check marks when you confirm, okay, yes, this is right. This is matching with what Machiavelli said, because they're raised on it. So
maybe we just think about things in terms of Machiavelli because he was more recent and more prominent in our in our education.
And
It's true.
yeah, and
it
people,
could be that.
Yeah.
But either way, I do want to. I'm going to try and simplify these two things. And look, if I have a successful business and I make a lot of money, it hurts me to think that I got there. And this isn't a personal thing. This is just a general statement. It hurts the self to think that I got there off of other people's suffering or out of luck, or that I didn't deserve it. Right. So the more that I have that other people don't have in proportion, the more I need to feel that this is because I earned it, you know? And the less that I have, right? If I don't make it into college, but all of my friends make it into college, the more I'm like, it's just a lottery anyway, right? Because if it's a meritocracy, then I'm a failure. So both sides have a reason, you know, someone who has very little has a reason to think, it's not up to me. It's all in the
the cards are decked against me.
And someone who is winning doesn't want to believe that because
it's because of luck, but rather it's because they earned it. Yes,
and
this
so,
is a common thing.
I'm just making it obvious that the reason that Xenophon and Cyropedia is coming into popularity these days is because certain very wealthy individuals, at least some of the reason that it's becoming popular is because certain very wealthy individuals want it to be the zeitgeist.
Yeah, they do. Like, I'm not going to say, like, buy it wholesale what they're selling, and definitely consider the motivations of people who want to make one particular political theory trendy. But that's what I'm saying. Educate yourself.
Because Cyrus really believes, he says this, he says, the way to have a good military is by showing them what their rewards will be for how they act. And so basically, if you're better than them, then you'll be ranked above them. And then if you're the best of these guys, you'll be ranked above them. And he literally says it's a meritocracy, so that he says every man gets exactly what he deserves according to Cyrus's standards.
Yeah, so of course, yeah. I mean, any political situation like that, you're going to have the rules based on what the leader of that rule
well, that's
creates.
why I'm very pessimistic about meritocracy.
Yeah, I mean, even nowadays we see the collapse of meritocracy even in the U.S.
Yeah, clearly conservative economics are meritocratous. I mean, the idea that you should have social welfare is the opposite of meritocracy. Right?
Yeah, and the things these,
you should work for it. You should starve to death if you can't make enough money to feed yourself.
Yeah,
that's meritocracy to a right,
very and it's what you're talking about. Version. Like, these people don't understand that, like, hey, they were kind of lucky, and maybe the people who are not doing so well, maybe they could have worked harder. But honestly, the cards
can
are
both
also
be true. They can both be true. Yeah,
they also had cards decked against them that they had no control over.
Yeah, so we've been doing positivism versus naturalism and realism and legal philosophy, and in this case, it's like we're talking about power, politics. Well, there's this skeptical approach, which is Machiavelli, and there's this optimistic or positivistic approach, which is the meritocracy of Xenophon. And in the middle, we're hoping for a world of realism where we can say, look, the cards are stacked for or against us, and our actions we're responsible for.
And this is where noblesse oblige comes from, right? Like,
tell me.
Noblesse oblige, the idea that nobles or the higher ranking people in the aristocracy, they say, okay, we get that, we understand that, like, yes, we got here on some merit, and we also had a lot of cards in our favor. So how we're gonna make up for that is we're going to help you out. We're gonna help you out. We're gonna give you what you like as much as we can help you out.
I'm so glad that you just said what you said.
We're gonna give you as much as we can help you, and this, in fact, this relates to your previous episode because when we talk about things like socialism, like, where does this idea come from? Like, the idea of charity, the idea of largesse and generosity and noblesse oblige. It's to balance the unfairness of the world through society's rules and say, look, we get it. We get that some things weren't in your favor, and we're going to help you out, and we're going to help you out as much as we can afford to, because that also helps the integrity of the social structure, because not everyone's going to feel like, hey, this game is rigged against us. Let's either sabotage it or leave. It helps everyone stay in there, and it might not necessarily be for a cynical reason like to control everyone, but it might just be because we want to make it as fair for people as we can. And that's where the kind of positive idea of noblesse oblige comes from.
Well, I just thought we're about to close out.
Yeah.
But I just thought I'd take a look at some of these notes that I took on Cyropedia. This is in the early chapters are where all of the heavy political stuff goes on. It talks about his education. And this is one of the things that I think is like, it sounds right, but you can see how it was used to control people.
Oh, absolutely.
Ingratitude is the basest sin. That's what Cyrus was taught, that ingratitude was the basest sin. So everything you're doing is in terms of, are you being grateful? And I could see it in a very religious sense where I'm like, oh, yeah. If you think that you deserve it.
Not necessarily on the as a basis of sin per se. It's more like what I read was if someone is seen as being ungrateful, you know that he's not necessarily a good person because he doesn't recognize all the things he should be grateful for. And we see this even today in religious and spiritual philosophy, right? Like gratefulness, meditation, or like recognizing what you can be grateful for.
This reminds me of Mad Max Fury Road. Nathan, could you tell me what he says about the water?
No, I've never watched the film.
Would you Google it for me real quick?
Who says about the water?
The bad guy. Mad Max Fury Road, the bad guy says about water. Basically, he controls all the water, and the people have nothing. So to me, this is what Cyrus is. He has everything, and he specifically says, don't think that I've stolen from them. I deserve it because I own them. And whenever I give them anything, they should be thankful. This is what Cyrus says.
Okay, so you're seeing it in the more control perspective. Like they're using gratitude as a way to control
gratitude
people.
is social. Exactly. It's just
I'm
social
definitely
control,
seeing
exactly.
it. I'm seeing it in a more optimistic light because.
But I see it there too.
Yeah.
But only on a personal level, or a spiritual level, not on the politics or social control level.
I mean, blame me for being optimistic if you want, but I see it in the sense of like, listen, like. You have to understand, even being in a society is so beneficial to you. Like, let's take, for example, this comes up a lot in like philosophical or scientific or statistic videos that I watch. Like, even being born in the U.S. puts you at a significant advantage over people born in other countries.
Result I got. Do not, my friends, become addicted to water. It will take hold of you, and you will resent its absence.
There you go. You can see the relation there.
Yeah, absolutely.
To tell you, hey, don't be ungrateful.
It's not that I don't see the negative
side. We gave
side.
you bread. We gave you water.
Yeah.
You want housing. You want not to be forced into the draft. You want so much. You're so ungrateful.
And it's not that I don't see the negative side. It's that I choose to be optimistic regardless. And that's why I'm emphasizing there's a lot of apathy for a lot of people on politics. And I think that it's good to emphasize, again, from me, that you should educate yourself because then this won't be a problem. Because if you understand that, hey, this is what they're doing.
Hope
this is what they're doing. And this is how they're. If they are being generous, you'll be able to recognize it. If they're trying to control you, you'll be able to recognize it because you're now more knowledgeable about it and you can see the truth.
So Machiavelli is afraid that if you are actually being generous, that they won't recognize it, and if you fake it, that they will recognize that you're faking it, or that you will ultimately be doing more harm than good anyway. I'd like to talk a bit about fortune. Both of them have a relationship to fortune. We've talked a little bit about it just now. I mean, the deck is stacked against you or not. Like, that's not something that Cyropedia believes. Cyrus doesn't believe that fortune. He says, it is a sin to ask the gods for a victory that you have not trained to win. If you wouldn't win this without training, don't ask the gods to win.
And I want to
train. And then you can ask the gods to win.
I want to talk about internal locus and external locus.
And that's meritocracy.
Yeah. That's true too. But I want to talk about internal locus or external locus because these are psychological concepts.
Are kind of like intersections.
Well, let me talk about it. Internal locus is where you believe that you are in charge of your destiny and you can't blame anything else. you have to bring yourself up to par. An external locus is where you blame external circumstances for your successes or failures. And generally, it's used to identify that you blame external factors for your failures more than your successes.
Right.
But in this case, obviously, Cyrus is a strong believer that everyone should have an internal locus. They should hold themselves accountable, themselves responsible. There's no such thing as luck, or at least it shouldn't affect you no matter what. You should make your own fate. And the cool thing about that is that's admirable. The unfortunate thing about that is it completely ignores like 99% of the people sometimes.
What Machiavelli says about fortune is that she might exist, but if she does exist, then she's a woman, first of all. And second of all, she has to be controlled. You have to wrest control from her. So basically, fortune might exist, but it probably only does, you can't count on it for the good stuff. Basically saying that there are going to be bad things that you can't help, but the good stuff, don't count on fortune to happen. There's going to be bad stuff happening because of fortune. You should count on a bad day because of fortune. But if you want something good to happen for yourself, it's because you wrested it from fortune.
Yeah, and it's a kind of Moore's Law thing, right? Like expect anything that could possibly go wrong, expect it to go wrong kind of mentality Machiavelli seems to have.
Yeah,
there.
he allows for fortune in that aspect, but not so much
in the negative side, not in the positive side.
Whereas Cyropedia doesn't see it at all.
That is for you to do yourself, for you to take control of. And when you do achieve success, you feel very great about it. When you don't achieve success, you're just going to blame yourself even more. That's the negative side of what Machiavelli is saying. Because and of course, I wanted to point out when you said it that, of course, if she exists, it's a woman. Because
it's very clear that they say
I want to kind of really like analyze what's going on here. They want to emphasize the fickle nature of fortune. There's a kind of negative connotation to woman, of course.
Right. It's supposed to be.
And
it's assuming that
something
that
you should control.
Submissive.
Yes, something that you should control.
If it's a woman, then the only way to best it would be through control, not through persuasion or logic.
Exactly, and that's why I wanted to kind of.
And this is misogyny.
Dissect
this
it.
is wrong.
Yeah. And that's why I'm giving it I'm going to give it a charitable interpretation and say he does this. He personifies it as a woman for those two reasons we just talked about. Fortune is fickle, and also it's something that you should cause to submit to you by taking charge of your fate. I'm gonna end my comment on that.
Yeah, this is probably stuff that I could have said at the beginning, but I'm just gonna go through it real quick. When I read Cyropedia, some of the first things that I read, and this is the order that I learned them. First of all, we learned that man hates rulers, unlike animals, which are. They love their shepherd. They don't have to be convinced. They just trust their shepherd. They're very easy to rule. And so this asks the question, is government even possible then? Is basically the first thing that happens. Since men hate rulers, is it possible? And then we learned that Cyrus is the most good king and leader. Why? Well, Xenophon says he's blessed by nature, and later other characters say that he is of the gods. So that's why we discussed the deification of these beings. One of the things that it says that he was blessed by nature by the threefold love of man, knowledge, and honor. And he was blessed in soul and body. And I'm just giving some important pieces of data that you may want to think about. I'm not sure exactly the relevance of all of this. But he was taught righteousness and justice. He was taught that ingratitude was the basest sin. And he was taught control of the senses, which I always think is very yogic. This is something that I do really enjoy about Cyrus. He was taught obedience, continence, and self-restraint.
Kind of self-discipline and self-control.
Yeah, and he's taught the difference between being humble and being continent. A man who is humble doesn't do bad things and whenever other people can see it, but a man who is self-restraint doesn't do bad, even if no one can see it.
Yes.
These are good things. These are good proverbs.
These are. And I want to talk about just a little about that's why militaristic societies are so valued. And a lot of, and as you can see in this Cyropedia, if the viewers do decide to, and the listeners do decide to read it, you can see that that's why Xenophon describes their society as militaristic, because it's a lot about teaching those men discipline and self-control and how to take charge of their own fates.
I think of it like the fact that they were a military society. That's why these work. I don't know that these work best in a military society. I'm just saying that the reason that he thinks these things, the reason that they were taught to be, grateful and to be continent and obedient was because they were soldiers, and they were sometimes going to have to go several days without good food, or they had to sleep in the cold in a desert.
Yeah.
So that's why these values were important, because they were warfare people. And that's probably why it has so many relations to some of these. I mentioned some deific texts like, the Hebrew Torah, the Ramayana. They're both describing war people.
Yeah. Or I mean, in the case of the Hebrews, they were nomads. So they also had to deal with tough circumstances. You can see that a lot of successful conquerors tended to be people who lived tough lives, and as a result, were able to endure their enemies. Like the Mongolians, for example, lived very tough nomadic lives. And because of that, they were more easily able to conquer.
It gave them a huge
advantage. Yeah, that's why they were more easily able to conquer the Chinese, for example, who had more comfortable lives.
They weren't used to living in houses, which is to the detriment of the quality of their lives. But because they weren't used to living in houses, they were more nomadic. Their military could get up and move like that.
Yeah, and it hardened them, and it gave them the mental toughness they needed to survive and do well in war. And
less sacrifice was needed to be on.
I don't know if it was Genghis Khan or one of them said that. I fear that, or I believe that many generations from now, when one of my descendants sits on the throne after we've conquered China, they're going to sit on the throne of China too, and not just Mongolia. Mm-hmm. They're going to be so comfortable, swaddled, indulged, and surrounded by beautiful women that they're not going to have the toughness necessary to maintain that dynasty.
You brought up beautiful women. I'd like to talk a little bit about the fact that Cyrus, because of his position, he insists on he's basically asexual. He seems to not even have desire for women, but he's very afraid of the possibility of desiring sex.
This goes back to discipline and self-control,
Perhaps,
right?
Yeah, the yogi thing. Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I'm like, I could see how that's very useful, and on the other hand,
it seems
like we have to become robots to live in this utopia that Cyropedia offers.
Exactly, and that's why I said, listen, like he framed it at the very beginning as a militaristic society. These kids are similar to Spartan society. These kids are taken away
from their parents at the age of 3 years old.
Yeah, and made to lie down together all around government buildings.
You spend your time with your teachers, and every meal you sit with your soldier, basically your sergeant, every day.
It's a harsh living, and it's so that they can have that discipline and organization. And what were we talking about? We were saying...
I'm not sure which one we're talking about. We've talked about so much today.
No, but like you were just talking about how the...
I'm so sorry. We'll get back to it when we can.
Yeah. Anyway, that is why... Oh, yeah, about sensual pleasure. Why he wants to be asexual. Because
he wants to be a good warrior.
The discipline and self-control that he has, he knows he might lose it if he indulges himself. And sexual pleasure is one of those things that is very indulgent, and he fears that that's going to take away from him his drive and his.
And the way that Xenophon talks about the couple that's discussed in this relationship in Xenophon and Cyropedia, it leaves me to think that he doesn't think Cyrus has it 100% right, because he talks very, very sweetly about their love. And so it sort of implies like Cyrus's sacrifice was a sacrifice, not just that he was asexual, and also that he's missing something. That's what I think.
It's absolutely, I also agree with that.
Because why would he mention so much about the woman's weeping and how even Cyrus was brought to tears whenever she's weeping because she's lost her husband?
Yeah, it's a kind of, you seem to think that like they're making this sacrifice, and again, going back to that soldier mentality.
And it might not be worth it.
They're making that sacrifice because he thinks that it's a sacrifice he needs to make as a leader.
He thinks it's an effective thing to do.
He thinks it's a sacrifice he needs to make as a leader so that he can be a better leader. He needs to give up that pleasure of a loving relationship.
What's great about Cyrus is he's always looking for ways to advance himself and looking for traps to avoid and to give to his enemies.
Yeah. And also, I would like to look at it from this viewpoint. His family is not just his family. It's the entire society that he rules over.
And shouldn't every ruler be like that? Jesus was like that. You know? Jesus says to his mother, you know, who are my mother and my father? And he points to all these people. I'm talking to my mother and my father and my brothers.
Yeah.
You know. Here's something else I've written and I'd like to talk about a bit. He says, to seem wise, be wise. And he's talking about to secure obedience. As opposed to Machiavelli says, if you are wise, you'll either be taken advantage of, you won't be seen for your wisdom, and you'll end up doing things that are not.
Yeah, people will realize immediately.
So Cyropedia says that your wisdom will be. It basically says that the truth will come out, and you know.
And this is one of the things.
It says don't assume so much. You're going to have to basically manipulate them for them to see you as positive, even though you are a positive person. You'll have to manipulate them to make them think that you're a good person in order for you to be able to do good.
And this is why I like Cyrus over the Cyropedia over the Prince, because there's an emphasis of wisdom over here, over manipulation, and that's what I really appreciate. Become more educated, become wise, learn from experienced and wiser people than you, and that I believe is a means to being a better leader. I do truly believe that if you're wiser, you can be a better leader for your group or your team or your people.
Or maybe you just have more words to justify your harms. That's I'm just being skeptic, you know.
No, I appreciate that.
I've got just about 2 more lines we're going to look at
Go
today.
ahead.
So one of them here, he talks about what is lawful and what is lawful against your enemies, which is when one can apply the law of greed. So this is something I've said earlier today, was just that Cyropedia allows for harm and he justifies it as for the greater good. Machiavelli does the same. He also allows for harm and justifies it for the greater good. But Cyrus seems to think that it's like in and of itself good, not just for the greater good. You know, it's a more wholesome goodness, where Machiavelli is like, no, it's an end justifying mean good. Anything to say on that?
I think that
what is lawful against your enemies, and when one can apply the law of greed.
So maybe looting or something, you know?
Yeah. Or lying.
Or lying or murder, as long as it's not the people of their society.
Yeah.
It's okay for soldiers to do that when they're...
Isn't this highly problematic?
I mean,
you know?
Obviously.
Who is
right?
them? You know me as a Ram Dass person. It's like, who are they? Who's they? It's all us.
Yeah.
So he's missing the bigger point to me.
Yeah, because ultimately, I do think that I disagree with his idea there. I think that ultimately that harm is going to come back and harm you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do some harm like that, it's going to bite you, and you're not even going to realize where it comes from. So, what they'll do is let's take the looting example, for example, or soldiers that won a war, they will kill everyone, the children and the woman too. So no one will take revenge. So then you'll say, okay, it's good. It's okay to do that because not us.
It's for the greater good.
It's not us, right? It's them.
And
Nothing
it stops
is happening.
a war from happening in 20 years, so it's for the greater good.
But what happens? Now there's less population, and these are people that enslave, right? Well, guess what? You just reduced your potential slave population.
True.
So according to their standards, they're harming themselves, and that's why I keep saying, study this, look at this.
Maybe that is for the greater good if they were killed instead of being enslaved for generations. But that might be another conversation.
Yeah.
This is my last bit. This is just pointing to Cyrus being a meritocratist. He says, nothing more unfair, Nathan, nothing is more unfair than treating the base man and the good man equal.
And
that means if you are shitty, you should get shit. And if you are good, you should be rich and prosperous. And if that's true, then that means that the rich and prosperous are good.
Yeah.
And that the poor are shitty.
So in reverse.
That's why I hate Cyrus.
In reverse. So yeah. So there are problems with this. It justifies and maintains a status quo.
Sure does.
It says that
a stratification of society.
But let's be fair, that exists always.
Of course, but this is an excuse.
People saying, well, if they got to that position of power or wealth, they deserved it.
They must have worked for it. They worked. They worked very hard. But how much does one work to make $1 billion?
And yes, obviously they're using the multitude of people they employ and taking the benefit off of that.
Whose work is it? Yes.
So I think they would say, oh, well, it's a greater, more virtuous man that
He's just
is-
more virtuous.
is
than
reining
them.
in those
Yeah.
oxen. He's reining in those.
He's not just
those-
working more than them. He's more virtuous than them.
Yeah, and he let's do a charitable interpretation. Let's say
I try.
he will say, well, let's take Jeff Bezos for example. Without Jeff Bezos' idea and his tactics and his methodologies, would we even have a large company like Amazon that achieved what it did, that created so much, like AWS, that a lot of companies now rely on? And just recently we had an incident where AWS crashed and
a lot
so
of
many
stuff went down.
services were out. Yeah, so
So that just goes to show how much common good Amazon provides to the world.
yes, and because of that, and we'll say that and in the charitable interpretation, we'll say that without Jeff Bezos, we may not have achieved that. And
Perhaps.
just because all these people put that effort in does not mean that Jeff Bezos wasn't the key factor in that equation. And maybe they should be given more. Maybe they should be given more for their service.
They
not
should.
be
But that's
exploited.
not-
But that's why
both of us have worked for Amazon. I still work for Amazon. It's interesting to
Yeah,
personal feelings there.
And that's why it's fun for me to argue for that side.
Yes, it's very difficult.
Because I have been on the other side, right? Just like you. And right now you're taking the against this and saying,
Amazon, I mean, hey, is it really for the greater good? All those things that we see that is the common good, like AWS going down, do we need that? And at the cost that it come for?
yeah, it's a fragile
But
internet
That's
infrastructure,
another one.
right?
That's another one, yeah.
It's a fragile internet infrastructure that allowed for so many useful services, government services in the U.S. and in UK to be taken down, as far as I know, to be taken down, causing harm for so many
So
people.
many small businesses that never came into being.
Yes.
And then again, there's so many small businesses
So
that
many-
only exist because of Amazon. It goes forever.
Yeah.
But that's our time for today. It was a pleasure. I was looking forward for a few weeks talking to you about this, and I'll be having you on again soon. I hope so.
I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Of
I'm
course.
really happy. I actually enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And again, this has been Impolite Company, where we discuss religion, politics, and their intersections. I really appreciate my tech guy, Nathan, for
Hello.
putting this together. And I appreciate all of you for listening. If you have anything that you would like to hear about or discuss, please feel free to email us or get a hold of us. We have a YouTube and we have a Instagram. I'd love to hear from any of you about future subjects. In the meantime, keep it tuned. Next week we'll be discussing Norse religion and the revival of neo-paganism.